So I would say for organizations moving forward, keep that near-term focus, but don't lose sight of what the long-term possibilities could look like. Still do that scenario planning, still be building those workforce plans, leverage your people analytics. Granted, they're probably going to look pretty wonky for the next 3 to 6 months or even longer, but watch them, see what your trends are telling you, and try to translate into what that might mean for the future.
Welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. I'm your host, Akanksha Kulkarni, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for the HCM, that is specifically built for the crafted employee experience and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and the video channel, which receive upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally. And now for our guest, Sarah Sheffer is the Director of Strategic Workforce and Planning at Henry Ford Health System. She is a certified strategic workforce planner, and her expertise includes strategic workforce planning, people analytics, data visualization, and reporting, assessment, talent acquisition strategy, and employment branding. We are extremely happy and honored to have her on our interview series today. Welcome, Sarah. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
So let's begin with our interview. The first question I would like to ask you is, you have completed more than 10 years in this industry. So what is it that ignites this feeling of excelling every day? What is it that makes you feel like, oh, I should get out of bed and I love what I do, I should do this?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been in my my field for over a decade. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but the calendar confirms it. I love how it's always evolving. HR and talent strategy is consistently coming up with emerging ideas, new ways of work. I know human resources traditionally has been viewed as a very transactional function within the business. And as the function has changed over time, we've really become business partners, strategic influencers, and guides on best practices for our people and our talent. So what really drives me is the ever-evolving nature of the work. It's really fun to follow industry leaders to see what they're doing and what companies are doing to stay innovative and cutting edge and really drive employee engagement, retention, and hiring best practices.
Okay, that's great. A great answer. So, what are the habits to be successful managers? What are the practices when it comes to the recruiting the right talent?
I think when it comes to recruiting and hiring the right people, it's really important for an organization to have a very strong message or a foundation in which people can get behind. When you believe in something or when you align to a company's mission or values, you really, I think, are more dedicated to your role and into the organization. That's one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed my transition into working for a healthcare organization, is because the mission and the work that we do just has such a powerful and positive impact on our community. So when you want to hire the very best, not only should you have good hiring practices in place, but your employment brand and your mission and your values should also be equally as developed and focused in order to attract the right people to your organization.
Right, yeah, absolutely. That's, that really resonates with it. So, what is most innovative tip, or, what is your hiring best practice that you would like to give?
I would say hire for the soft skills, because you can teach somebody the hard skills. You can help develop their experience. What isn't always there is that drive or that willingness to learn or that creative mindset, or being able to go from being really, really high at the 1,000-foot view down into the weeds and the itty bitty details. Those are just a handful of characteristics that, depending on the role that you're hiring for, if you find somebody who has the potential, I would hire over potential over experience any day, as long as the person is interested and willing to learn.
Yeah, so the learning ability should be more than, the experience at all. The talent is always there. It's just you have to be there to learn every now and then. Need to be ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the best way to screen an interview for someone to fit in your culture or in your organization? So, how do you go about that?
I've always been a really big fan of behavioral-based interviewing. I think it's very telling on how somebody approaches their work, what type of work ethic they have, and how they might work well with customers or other teams, or even just, colleagues on a project. So I've always been a big fan of that interview style. I also like to ask people that I am interviewing what type of work culture they feel that they work best in before I start talking about our company culture. A lot of people have a preference in terms of what type of environment they really thrive in. So you might ask them what their favorite company was in the past to work for and why, or what type of environment do they really succeed or thrive in. And then I also like to touch on more individual details, like what does your ideal workday look like? And it gives me an idea of how somebody thinks, how they structure themselves. I like to find people that are able to work both collaboratively, but also very independently as well. If you can throw something to somebody and allow them to run with it, even if it's still a learning experience, and then bring it back and have those touch points along the way. I find that to be a far greater learning experience, as it has been for me. I've been very fortunate to have those work experiences where I'm trusted by a leader to take on an initiative or drive a project or an assignment, maybe not knowing all of the ins and outs going into it.
Yeah.
But you ask questions along the way and you gather feedback and you do research, and it just becomes an addition to your career and helps you become more of a well-rounded, experienced professional. So culture fit is very important. And I think if you structure your interviews properly, you can get a pretty good idea if somebody would be a good fit for the culture or not. There are always, things that can slip through the cracks, and I think it becomes very evident very quickly, usually within the first couple of weeks or first month or so, if somebody maybe wasn't the best fit for the culture. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a period of adjustment as well. Every company is different, so maybe it's sitting down with an HR business partner or their leader and really kind of talking through what they might be struggling with or what the transition pain points have been for them, and then being able to work forward from there, because sometimes it just takes a little bit of getting used to when you transition from a very different culture into a new one.
Yeah, right. So basically, communication is the big key in all of this, right? So if you can communicate your feelings and what you feel to all of your employees and your bosses above you, I guess that would make it a lot easier.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So moving on to our next question. So goals versus OKRs. Which one is better in your view?
So I'm going to kind of play the fence on this because I think both are valuable in their own way. I think OKRs are, I think they're great in a work environment. I believe that objectives and results are a great way to measure somebody's productivity as well as performance on the job. Not to say that goals can't be used in a professional environment, but in my opinion, I think goals are a little bit more personal. So I always look at, while comparing the two, I kind of do it twofold. I set goals for myself because I feel I'm more likely to hold myself accountable to those and to drive towards them. Versus having more performance-based objectives, I think are a great way for an organization to really kind of track an employee's progress and see how they're doing against things that might be triggered by compensation increases, performance reviews, potential promotions, or growth opportunities.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I agree with you completely. So, just tell me, in this scenario of pandemic and remote working, do you think like the gig economy can enable organizations to fill in the skill and talent availability? And what do you see the post-pandemic future?
Sure. Well, even before COVID-19 really emerged, you saw a big uptick in the gig economy. It was becoming more mainstream and more norm, which is really exciting to see. I have a handful of friends and family members and people close to me that prefer gig work, and it really allows you to flex and play to your strengths without being constrained to a specific role in a specific organization. It really gives you a lot of exposure, I think, to different companies or perhaps different industries, and then it may help you more easily expand your skill set and your experience as well, which you may not have gotten in a traditional role. With that being said, I think we'll still continue to see an increase in gig employment. My hope is that companies have come to realize that there is a lot of value in hiring someone with a very specialized skill set, even if it is for a specific duration of time to complete a project or an initiative. So I think a lot of organizations are becoming far more innovative and forward thinking in that way. Also, with many of us being able to work remotely now, or sort of being forced to work remotely if we weren't before, I think that organizations are going to be a lot more open to that, which really it opens up your talent pool tremendously. Rather than looking in your specific geographic region to find somebody with a highly specialized skill set, you could now be, several states or even a continent away and be able to find the very best person for that job that maybe you would not have found if you were looking in your local market.
Yeah, right. So the flexibility that has come in with this remote working and everything, that has made it possible for companies to, recognize the gig workers more.
Yes.
Yeah. So lastly, like to wrap up this interview, do you have any important sound bites that you would like to leave our audience with?
Gosh, that's a loaded question. I would say that COVID-19 has changed the way that we work, and we will see long-term impacts from this. And I think that where I have been focusing my career over the last couple of years in strategic workforce planning and people analytics, when I first started in that area of HR, you were trying to plan 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years out. And over time, companies and in the companies I've been employed with have really pulled that back to say, even if we can get a good look at what our next 12 to 24 months will look like, that's going to help us with our business planning tremendously. And then COVID hit, and it's like, how can we plan for the next day, the next week, the next month? So I've really had an opportunity to do more real-time workforce planning that I don't think anything outside of the situation would have necessarily given me the opportunity to do. So I would say for organizations moving forward, keep that near-term focus, but don't lose sight of what the long-term possibilities could look like. Still do that scenario planning, still be building those workforce plans, leverage your people analytics. Granted, they're probably going to look pretty wonky for the next 3 to 6 months or even longer, but watch them, see what your trends are telling you, and try to translate into what that might mean for the future.
Yeah, that was a wonderful answer, and it was a pleasure talking to you, Sarah. I really appreciate your time and sharing your views with us. And it's been a really enriching and learning experience for me personally, and I guess this will surely be for our viewers too. So let's keep in touch and have a safe and healthy life ahead of you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Same to you. This has been a lot of fun.